I see that we are 1 minute past 1, so I'm going to start our session for today. Welcome everyone to today's webinar with myself and Baynes. For those of you who don't know, we are currently running a series themed Connecting Project Teams. And in this webinar, we will take a deep dive into Autodesk Revit itself, and I will be showing you how your project teams can collaborate using a combined Revit model. Okay, so just a quick introduction of myself. I'm Anine Nota, and I'm a BIM specialist here at Baynes in the ASC build environment. I'm also qualified as a professional architect, and I completed my studies at the University of the Free State, where after I worked full-time as an architect for 7 years. So in August 2020, I took a bit of a career turn and I became part of the Baynes team. So just in terms of our agenda for today, I will briefly give you an introduction of Baynes, who we are and what we do. We're then going to look at the different types of Revit collaboration, what that means and how they are used. We're going to go through managing your team work sharing processes and some important considerations regarding these. We will also be looking at some best practices when using work sharing. And we will also look at some troubleshooting that you may encounter when working on your Revit Central files. Okay, so just want to quickly just check the chat box quickly. Okay, there we go. Just in terms of Baynes, who we are, so we're proud to have evolved from being an Autodesk reseller to a consulting company over the past 5 years. So we strive to solve our customers' problems through digital transformation, and one of our main objectives are to help you design and make a better world. So our service offerings range between business process improvement consulting, survey and design hardware consulting, design software consulting, as well as a blended learning approach to how we believe our customers can or should digest information. An exciting addition to our survey and design hardware is the use of Topcon and Leica hardware to provide you with a scan-to-BIM solution. And this allows for more simplified and efficient data capturing and processing with more time available to create meaningful deliverables. So the industries that Baynes consults in are the built environment, civil, energy, manufacturing, and also process plant and mining. Looking at our consulting methodology, it's called the I-Adopt, and this is our unique approach to ensure that successful digital transformation is applied. With this, we help our clients adopt technology and also the processes within the architecture, engineering, construction, infrastructure, manufacturing, and process plant industries. We work with your people, your processes, and your technologies with a focus really being on problem solving. So our I-Adopt is a holistic approach which extends well beyond just the CAD environment. Change management and optimized business processes, for instance, are just some of the many benefits that we offer. Okay, so starting with the actual content, looking at the different types of Revit collaboration. When we are talking about collaborating with others, we commonly refer to the term work sharing. Now, for those of you who might not be familiar with it yet, it's actually just a design method that allows multiple team members to work on the same project model at the same time. So it typically occurs in one of two ways, which can either be internally, so that is maybe within your company between various project team members who works on the same project model at the same time. Or it can be done externally, where you have multidisciplinary project teams having to collaborate on the same project. Okay, so let's have a closer look at internal collaboration. And if we look at what working a team would look like, On many projects, team members are assigned a specific functional area to work on. So when doing work sharing internally, a shared model called the central model is created. So each team member saves a local copy of the central model. They work locally in it, and then they synchronize with the central model so that all the other users can see their work. Revit projects can be subdivided into something called worksets to accommodate such environments, and this is something that we will touch on in a short bit. So when doing work sharing, a starting point would be to decide on the method of sharing that's going to be done. So based on the project's complexity and size, as well as the geographic locations of the team, you can either use the file-based or server-based methods of work sharing. So with file-based work sharing, it means that the central model is stored in a file at a network location that all team members can access. I'm just going to go to that slide again. So the various team members then each create a copy of that central model. When a project team is working on a local area network, also known as LAN, file-based work sharing provides sufficient performance and is actually the best approach to use. Just note that file-based work sharing does not require installation of the Revit server application. So with server-based work sharing, central models are stored on one or more Revit servers. So team members access the models using local Revit server accelerators, which improve performance when communicating across wide area networks. Revit server and server-based work sharing allows geographically dispersed project teams to collaborate on the same model across a wide area network. So as can be seen in the image on the screen, multiple team members in multiple local sites use Revit server accelerators to all connect to one or more Revit servers across this wide area network. So aside from different locations for storing the central models, the workflow for both of these two just discussed is nearly identical. Okay, then the latest, more improved method of Revit collaboration, as many of you might know, is the Revit Cloud work sharing. And for this, BIM 360 design is used. Now, as opposed to Revit Server, BIM 360 design can help you improve productivity, it can help reduce rework, and even save you some money. So some key advances of BIM 360 design over Revit Server would be in terms of access. On Revit Server, your external consultants can all access your projects and all of your projects actually, and not just the current ones. Whereas with BIM 360, it lets you control who can see specific projects with up to 6 permission levels. Once set up, you can collaborate over Wi-Fi from anywhere. Just in terms of cost of ownership, companies using Revit Server have to pay for IT and hardware setup as well, and also maintenance costs. So with BIM 360, your hosting, setup, and configuration is managed by Autodesk. You simply assign seats and then you can get started. Lastly, BIM 360 design offers you improved efficiency. So users observe faster sync times, ease of remote collaboration, and also increased productivity from using a solution built for the ASC. These efficiencies then would also mean some cost savings directly to you. Okay, so besides working in a team on a single project model, project elements or systems may need to be separated into individually managed models, which can then be linked together using linked models. So linked models can also be used when your project contains distinct buildings, such as a campus, or when you are working with team members from other disciplines, such as structural engineers, mechanical engineers, as well as architects. Just to mention, linked models for coordination across different disciplines will be discussed in a section on external collaboration a bit later on in this webinar. Okay, so also note that you can link models in both workshared and non-workshared projects. So the host model and the linked model can each be linked between server-based workshared projects, file-based workshared projects, as well as non-workshared projects on regular file servers or local computers. Okay, so now we will be looking at some considerations in terms of managing your team processes when you are collaborating internally within your team. Okay, so to simplify design coordination and change management, Revit provides us with certain tools that we can use for this. The ones that we will be looking at today is Show History, the Worksharing Monitor system, as well as Worksets. We will also be looking at these more in terms of collaborating internally and locally work sharing across the team. Okay, so starting off with the first one, which is Show History. This is where you can view a list of all the times a worksheet project, the central model or a local copy of the central model was saved, and also by whom. So by clicking down the drop-down menu in the Synchronize with Central tool, a Synchronize with Central dialog will open up, and you have then various settings within it. So right down at the bottom, there is also a section where you can enter any comments should it be necessary. You would typically do this, say there was a major design change that has to be kept record of, you can enter it right there. So also by adding a comment, your other team members can see it and maybe be made aware of any important happenings on the central model. So if we added comments to see them, where will we go? You can do this by exploring the history of the central model. And this is something that I will show you a bit later on when I open my actual Revit file. But I just want to quickly discuss these three tools before we go there. So there's a Show History option under your Collaborate tab. And by clicking it, you can select the central model, and a history dialog will open up with all sorts of information about each action involving your central file. You can, for instance, see who last synchronized with the central file and when, who reload latest, as well as the comments that I just mentioned. Okay, so then next, looking at Worksharing Monitor. This is something that is available to everyone who has Revit. Should you not have it, you may need to check your Autodesk Desktop Connector app for any updates or to download this app onto your desktop. So why would we want to use this? For worksheet projects, this tool can actually help you and tell you things like who is currently working on this project, or is my local copy of the project up to date, or when will my Synchronize with Central operation finish? Has my request to borrow elements been granted? So that you can check notifications with regards to that. Or maybe is there any issues that are interfering with my work on a Revit project? Okay, so you can also open it up separately while you're having your worksheet Revit project open. And just note that the Worksharing Monitor is not available when working with server-based worksheet projects. So for server-based work sharing, you can track submission history in the Revit Server Administrator. So although it's not required, it is recommended that you install this Worksharing Monitor on your computer when you're working on one or more worksheet Revit projects. Okay, and then the last one is Worksets, and this can be described as portions into which a project can be subdivided within Revit models. So a workset can either be a collection of building elements such as walls, doors, floors, stairs, etc., or it can be graphic elements such as views or sheets. Just simply put, it's actually a way of managing elements within your project. So just to give you a basic example, when working on a building, Maybe you've got a building with multiple floor levels and user A has to, say, work on floor 1. He would then place all of the elements on the first floor on a work set called the first floor, and this then means that he now owns the first floor work set. So any other user or team member that wants to work on this floor or work set will have to ask permission to do so first. Okay, so now these work sets can be created by you, and it's really very project dependent. You may maybe have a very wide wall which has different wings, and then you can set it up so that your work sets are divided between a west wing or a wing east or a wing north, and then your various team members can all work on them separately. So on the other hand, you may also have a very small project for which you don't really need work sets. So work sets just helps you manage the process better so that you're not constantly asking for permission to move small elements. However, when constantly getting notifications asking for permission to edit elements, which can be quite annoying, you may want to decide to actually set up work sets. Also note that it is preferred to set up your work sets in the initial stages of the project, but you're not limited to do it halfway. It does, however, take some manual labor from your side. It's almost like setting up layers in AutoCAD. So as work sets are simply portions of the file, they can be opened, closed, or managed independently. You can also create work sets based on functional areas. So for architecture and structural engineering, as an example, it can be divided into interior, exterior, and site work sets. Or maybe for systems, you can split it up into HVAC, electrical, or plumbing. Okay, so just to manage work sets of elements on a project, you will refer to your work sets dialog. And this you can find under the Collaborate tab in Revit by selecting the work sets option. So as already mentioned, all team members can view work sets owned by other team members, but they cannot always make changes to them. So what this restriction does, it actually prevents potential conflicts within your project. It is, however, possible to borrow an element from a work set that you do not own. Just a note, when Revit Cloud Worksharing is installed with Revit, the Worksets command is disabled for a non-workshared model. Okay, so when you enable worksharing, there are several default worksets that are created, which include 2 default user-created worksets, worksets for families that are loaded into the project, project standards, as well as your project views. Okay, so before we continue with some best practices when doing local work sharing, I would just like to jump into my Revit file to quickly just illustrate some things that we just discussed with you guys. Okay, so in terms of the comments that you can add when you're synchronizing with the central, by opening up your synchronize and modify settings, okay, you would see that you have various options that you can go through, but here at the bottom, as mentioned, I can enter a comment. So for instance, I've moved a window. I can say window to, oops, moved. Okay, I can say enter, just waiting for it quickly. Okay, so now it means that it has synchronized and it has transferred that information to the central model. Okay, so just if I would like to see these comments, by going to my show history option, I would then navigate to my actual central model. And if I open it up, here I can see a whole history dialog that opens up. And if we look over here, we can see the comment that I just added to it. Also in this dialog, you can see all of the times and dates when people are working on your central model each synchronized with it. And you can also see the the team members by whom it was made. Okay, and then there's also my comments that I've added. Okay, and then another thing, you can also export your history as a delimited text file, but I'm not going to do that right now. Okay, so that's just what the show history tool helps you with. And then the last thing that I also discussed was my Worksharing Monitor app, and you will open it from your start menu. Just check that obviously I'm in Autodesk Revit 2020, so I need to open my Worksharing Monitor for 2020. Okay, so by selecting it, it may take some time to open up. Just going to give it a while. Okay, so if you open it up, you can also, as I said, you can have it open up on the side and just check it again. It sometimes takes a while. Okay, there we go. So here you can see your Worksharing Monitor, and in here we can see who is currently working on the central file. Also, I can see my name over here, and I can also see, okay, I'm working in a local file. Oops, I'm just closing that one. So at the bottom here, we can see maybe any editing that requests that was submitted, or maybe some notifications. They will show up over here. So in this Worksharing Monitor, you can also see things like your system performance. Okay, so I'm just going to close that quickly. And then also you've got various options that you can open up. Maybe you want to set some desktop alerts, or under your central file access, you can tick various settings that you would like to see. Okay, so this is it for the Worksharing Monitor. Okay, so I forgot the last one that I just wanted to show you quickly is in terms of Worksets. Okay, so if we click it and it opens up, this is your Workset dialog, and over here you can see this is some default Worksets that was already set up, and you can see all your Worksets that has been set up in your project. You will also be able to see whether it's editable or not, and you can switch between yes or no over here. You can also see who is the owner of the Worksets. You can see maybe possible borrowers of Worksets, is it open or not, etc. And here at the bottom, you can also see some of the other default elements that I just mentioned. And if you select new, you can add any new Worksets as well. Just in terms of Worksets, I just want to go to view quickly. So also note that all elements in your project is actually assigned to a Workset. So if I click my wall over there and I go to my properties palette, here I can see that this element is assigned to Workset level 1. And this is quite important. So if you're working on various Worksets, that all your team members constantly working on a particular Workset, just double check or cross-reference that the elements are placed on the correct worksheet. Okay, so then just going back to my presentation. Okay, so just in terms of some best practices, when you're doing local work sharing, some guidelines would be, first of all, to verify that the same Revit version and software updates are installed on all the computers that share worksheets. And this is now not referring to the year versions, but rather the updates such as 2020.1, 2020.2, etc. You want to make sure that you are on the current update, because Autodesk constantly fixes minor issues on a version, and it's really important to make sure about the latest updates so that you can open. So to do this, you can actually open your Autodesk desktop app to run updates from that. Also, a good practice is to specify a default starting view when the central or a local model is opened up. And this is just a simple view where you can post project information or any notices that you would like to share with the team members whenever they open the model. Okay, so then just in terms of backups, it's important to ensure that a sufficient number of backups are being created. At a minimum, you should have at least one backup for each member of your work sharing team in order to increase the likelihood that each team member's data is saved as part of the backups. Okay, then also at each issue date or as required, use the detach from central option to create an independent archive-ready central file. Just note that backups are not supported for the server-based work sharing workflow. Another thing is also to keep your workstation specifications common amongst your project team. Also, regularly perform some maintenance on your central file, and then be sure to have consistent network locations or mapped drives. So what this means is that little letter next to your Z or Y drive, it needs to be common amongst the project team. So why is it important? It's so that all your team members can share a consistent network location to create their local files of. Okay, looking at some weekly best practices, one would be to fix your posted warnings. So for this, you would use the select link command to identify and fix any posted warnings prior to allowing local copies. So to access this, in your Collaborate tab, you will then select the Coordination Review option, and in the drop-down menu, you will select the option that says Select Link. Another weekly practice is to use the Open Audit tool, and this is where you would periodically open the central model, having the audit option selected, and then save your model. So what this helps with is that if there's any corrupted elements in your project, it would be encountered during this audit process, and you can delete it if necessary. And once that has been done, the user will be notified. Okay, so there's this use audit option. I will just show it to you a bit later on. And okay, third one is then performing an interference check, and this is also something that I will be discussing a bit later on. Another one is also just to delete unused or redundant views. Also purge any unused elements that would not potentially be used in later phases of the project. And lastly, you can also compact the central and local files. So just in terms of compacting your files, I just want to go one slide back. You see here that when you specify the amount of backups that you want to create, just below it, there's an option that says compact file. So on a weekly basis, it's a good practice to select that and compact your central or local file. Okay, I just want to go back quickly, and then let me actually, I just want to go to my Revit file quickly to just show you something on purging. Just give me a second. Okay, so to purge any unused elements, you would go to your Manage tab, and in your Settings panel, you will select Purge Unused. Okay, so what it then shows you all various elements that you can maybe remove that you don't use. So let me maybe open up some of my materials, and here you can, by keeping those selected and saying okay, it means that it would remove it from your file. Then also in terms of interference check, just quickly want to go there, and you will find the interference check option in your Collaborate tab, and by selecting interference check, selecting the Run interference check option, there will be another dialog that opens up. Okay, so this is where you can compare elements between your host model and also your link models, and we can check for any potential clashes. But I would like to return to this one a bit later on, so I'm just going to close it. Okay, and I just want to jump to my presentation again. Okay, so just some guidelines when working on Worksets is when you're working with links, it is good to create worksets for them and to set them off by default. And this is done by having your under your opened option to have it set to no. Okay, also create the minimum amount of worksets needed for the project and use element borrowing rather than checking out worksets. Next is maybe to save to the central file from a drafting view after first closing all your other open views. Also reload latest before saving to the central, and what this does is it updates your copy of the project without changing the central model. So this practice, it saves time by eliminating the need to reload the model during the save to central process. If you have not accessed your local file in a couple of days, it is actually better to create a new local file as it may be too far out of sync with the central file. Also, periodically verify that the information is placed on the correct worksets. And lastly, use the specify option when opening and also close any unnecessary worksets to release some allocated RAM. So just to show you guys what I mean when I say use the specify option to open, if I quickly go back to my Revit file, when I open up a new project, okay, I can say, for instance, I want to open my local file. On open, you would select specify. Just wait for it to, okay, I've already selected it, and then just waiting for it. Here, instead of opening up all your worksets, maybe you would only want to open your workset, and it will help you, yeah, your project just run a bit faster. Okay, so let me just jump back. Generally, it is recommended that you work in your local copy of the central model and that you not make any worksets editable. So when you edit an element that is not being edited by another team member, you automatically become the borrower of the element and you can make the changes that you need to. So it is recommended that you synchronize with the central frequently as you work along the way. And what this does, synchronizing, it relinquishes borrowed elements by default, allowing other team members to edit them. Okay, so looking at some troubleshooting that you may encounter when working on central files. You may have a nice time working and all of a sudden you get a warning that says your central file has become corrupt. So why would this happen? There are numerous reasons, but some of the main reasons are maybe you have a very unstable server or a very bad connection or a power outage during your synchronization process. So if your server is down, you may not want to sync, but you would rather save locally until your server is back on. Another reason might be that Revit finds a corrupt family in your model, and this may be because you're downloading families from the internet and you load them into your project without knowing that they have any errors on them or are corrupt. It's maybe because they weren't built properly or the geometry wasn't created properly, and then after some time these families become corrupt and they may corrupt your central model. Okay, another reason might also be users having different Revit version updates. So say for instance user A or have an update of 2019.2 and user C haven't done any updates and are still using 2019, and this is something that could potentially cause the central model to become corrupt somewhere along the line. Lastly, also insufficient free disk space might also cause your file to become corrupt. Okay, so what options do we have if our central model is corrupt? The first one would be to create a new central model by finding the user with the most recent local file and then creating a central model of this. Another option, if this is not possible, you can restore a backup file by restoring an earlier version of the central model. Also, check if your computer has sufficient free space on your hard drive. So at least 5 gigs of free space is recommended. Without sufficient free space, it means that Revit cannot expand the project into the temporary directory. So just to show you guys how to locate this temporary directory, you can click or press your Windows key and hit the letter E, and then in your navigation bar, you enter %temp percentage and hit enter, and then a list of temporary files will appear, and if needed, you can delete files in this directory to free up some space. Also, as I mentioned, you can remove a corrupt Revit family when you receive an error message telling you that that's the issue, and you can do this by finding the element ID of that corrupt family, searching for it, and then deleting it before it actually corrupts your model. And then lastly, also attempt opening local files with the audit box ticked, and it would prevent error messages such as Revit can't find missing elements and so from popping up. Okay, so I would once again just quickly like to show you some of this stuff that I just discussed. Just want to open my Revit file quickly. So just in terms of maybe creating or restoring a backup, you can select your restore backup option in your collaborate tool, and let me just navigate to the location. Obviously your files would be organized much more properly than mine is, but my central file and also my backup files are saved onto my desktop. So by opening up your backup folder, let me just quickly go there. Okay, you can see some backup versions, and by selecting one, you can resave it as a central model. Okay, also just in terms of finding a corrupt family, you will go to your Manage tab, and in your inquiry panel over there, you can select Review Warnings. Okay, and now here is where you will be able to see all of your warnings that are created while working in your project, and this is typically something that a lot of us ignore all the time, but if I just open it up and expand it a bit, here I can see maybe this wall is a corrupt family, and if I click on it, you would see that in my actual project view it would highlight it. Okay, so there's two ways of finding my corrupt family. This is one way, or alternatively I can check my ID over there. I can remember it, and there's another tool, select by ID, and when I open this up, I can enter that specific ID, and I hope I remembered it correctly. And what it means is there it will show me that specific family. So now that I know which family it is, I can delete it from my project in order to avoid any further corruptions for that matter. Okay, so then just want to see if there's some opening files. Yeah, just want to show you quickly if you want to open files on audit. Okay, if I just navigate back to my file, if you select your file and click audit, it will show you a warning that says this operation might take a long time. However, you may want to periodically run this in order to check maybe for any potential errors or corruptions on your file. Okay, so just lastly, how can we prevent our models from being corrupt? You, as I said, keep your Revit software up to date. You can perform regular model audits. You can create new central models on a weekly basis. and clean out a Revit family before into your project. Okay, so stepping off from external collaboration, or rather internal collaboration, let's look at external collaboration. So when architects, structural engineers, and mechanical engineers collaborate on a building project, they must share information about the designs so that all the teams are working with the same assumptions. Okay, so by coordinating effort across disciplines, the teams can avoid expensive errors and rework. Just looking at the ways in which multidisciplinary collaboration can take place, you can either do it via linked models or through Revit Cloud worksharing. Okay, so when multidisciplinary teams are collaborating and the various files and models have to be linked to a host model, there's a system called shared coordinates, and it's a suggested tool to help you link in the information more intelligently. So what does this mean? When you combine multiple models and files in a single project, you can use the shared coordinate system to establish the same positions of the files in relation to each other. So say, for example, you pick a coordinate on the corner of a building in an architectural model and that of the engineers, they should all have the same values. Also, in elevation or section, taking the level information, you should have the same values and information. Usually, the system would flow down from a site or a topography model, where you will get the information from the civil engineer who draws up the topography and set up these coordinates. So if you don't have someone like that who is on Revit, the next person who would typically do this is the architect, and you can find that information in the architect's model. The other consultants then can attain the coordinates via acquiring coordinates from a model in which this was set up, and they can apply it to their own model. So all of these tools you can find in the Manage tab under your Insert tab over there. Okay, so just a quick tip: you should only derive shared coordinates from only one file, and that one file then defines the coordinates for all the other files that compose the project. So you need to acquire the coordinates from one file and then publish those coordinates to the other files. Note once again that you shouldn't be using multiple files, and your project team members should agree on one file that would act as the master file from which you get all the information. The master file should obviously also be fully coordinated when it comes to where is the north point, or what is the coordinates of the site, or where is the topography of the site coming from, etc. Okay, so when collaborating with multidisciplinary team members using linked models, there are certain team processes that we can use to manage the process. So to do this, Revit once again has certain tools to help us coordinate the design process and also do change management. And also it makes the external collaboration process just a little bit easier. Copy Monitor, coordination review, and interference checks are what we will be discussing. Okay, so the Copy Monitor tool is something that a lot of engineers would use and know of. And how this tool works is, say for example, on a building project, the structural engineer sends the architect his or her Revit model. So after linking in the structural model, instead of the architect creating his own duplicate of items, he can use this Copy Monitor tool to copy these items over from the structural model. And you can also then monitor them if they ever change in the external linked model. For example, the architect copies over the floor slab onto his model, and it then becomes a live floor slab in the architect's actual model that he can interface with. It also gets monitored. So if, say for instance, the structural engineer's models change, or the floor slab changes, be it material, the size, or location, then your model on the next open or reload would give you a warning saying that a coordination review needs to be conducted and that you need to be wary of these changes. Okay, just want to go back quickly. There are also some other example items that you can copy monitor, which can be project setup related elements such as grid lines or your project level lines. So if you're an engineer or another consultant working off the architect levels and grid lines, you may want to use the copy monitor tool to avoid duplicating level lines and grids, and also use it to monitor these, so that if there are any changes in the original or in the master file, that you will get notified of the changes thereafter. This can also be done with columns as well. And then in terms of design related elements, like for instance, you're an engineer and you have to do electrical layouts, instead of creating your own ceilings, you can use the copy monitor to copy monitor the ceiling over from the architect's model and to place it in your model. And in that, then you can insert your lights fixtures as if it was your own. So if any changes in the architect's model occurs and you reload the new Revit link, it will highlight that there's a difference to your model and you need to review these changes. You can also do this for things like your plumbing fixtures. So this is definitely a very handy tool. Okay, next, in terms of coordination review, this is a tool that can help you identify potential issues. So if items are monitored, you can conduct a coordination review to see if anything has moved or changed on the linked Revit model. So it might be that there has been some stuff that has interfered with any of the monitored or copied over items, and you can identify it. Okay, so what it will do, it will display a list of warnings about monitored elements that have moved or changed. Okay, so teams can periodically review this list and then specify an action such as reject the change or modify the design, and they can enter comments to communicate with the other team members. Just note that coordination monitor warnings can occur because of maybe a monitored element has changed, moved, or have been deleted, or that a hosted element such as a door, a window, or an opening was added, moved, or changed, or deleted in a monitored wall or floor. Okay, so just note also that any changes to view-specific properties, such as view scale and visibility, it does not necessarily generate coordination monitor warnings. Okay, and then the last one is the interference check, which I already just touched on a little bit. And it's actually just a very basic form of clash detection. If you think about how Navisworks works, for examples. So it identifies elements that interfere with one another within your project or between the host project and a linked model. Okay, so just to distinguish, the interference check locates invalid intersections between elements of different types, whereas the copy monitor tool monitors pairs of elements of the same type. So during the design process, you can use this tool to coordinate major building elements and systems as well. You can also use it to prevent conflicts and also reduce the risk of construction changes and cost overruns. Okay, just quickly going back to my Revit file, if we go to collaborate and running the interference check, here I can tick the elements that I want to check against each other, and I'm going to select it and say okay. Okay, and then you will see that you receive a interference report, and by expanding it, I can actually see where there's potential issues or interferences. Also note that you can export this to maybe provide a report on any interferences, and this is quite a handy tool to use maybe right before a coordination meeting with other consultants, or prior to sending your drawings to site, to identify clashes in time and resolve it before it's an issue on site. Okay, so then we're coming to the last section of this session, which is the Revit Cloud Worksharing, which I briefly touched on in the beginning. And I just want to go one back quickly. Once again, architects, engineers, and contractors can also decide to use Revit Cloud Worksharing to collaborate on Revit models in the cloud. Okay, so with this method, you can co-author cloud models. You can centralize all your project design data, and you can also improve communication and collaboration across the entire team. Okay, so before Revit users can actually collaborate on a model in the cloud, you need to upload the model from Revit to BIM 360 document management first. So during the upload process, if the model does not yet have work sharing enabled, the work sharing is automatically enabled when you choose to collaborate on the cloud via BIM 360. Okay, so then the Revit model is then uploaded to BIM 360 and a locally cached version is created on your computer. Okay, so when you use the Open tool in Revit to access your cloud model, Revit ensures that you are working on the latest version of the cloud model. Okay, so when you use Revit Cloud Worksharing, locally cached versions of the cloud models are stored in a folder path, as can be seen on the screen. And it's really very important to just note that the data in the collaboration cache should not be directly accessed or manipulated. And that's why Revit automatically opens up your latest version of the cloud model. Okay, and then just to show you the workflow of enabling Workshare in the cloud from your Revit file. When you want to decide to collaborate, you would select your Collaborate tab and click your Collaborate option, and then you would select your Collaborate in BIM 360 Document Management option. Okay, once you've selected that, it will ask you, or you need to specify the account on BIM 360 that you want to upload this file to. So once you've double-clicked it, it will then ask you to also further specify in which to which folder you actually want to upload this file to. And here you can see I've uploaded it to the project files, and then just note that typically, or in most of the cases, you will upload your Revit files to the project files folder and not the plans folder. I will show it to you in a bit. And in your project files, you then select the subfolder to which you want to upload it. And once you've selected that, collaboration process would be initiated, and upon completion of that, it will notify you when you have successfully initiated your collaboration for the model. Okay, then just quickly to show you in BIM 360 itself, once you've enabled your Revit file for work sharing, going to your BIM 360, you would see in your document management module under your project files folder and your architect subfolder, you can see a list of all the files that have been uploaded to this subfolder. You can also see the version number, and that's actually the latest version that was uploaded. Okay, so what's nice about being able to see this, when I go back to my actual Revit file and I just want to confirm which was the latest version that I've uploaded, or that I actually publish my latest file to the cloud, I can go to an option called Manage Cloud Models, and by clicking it, a list of all my projects that has been added onto BIM 360 would show up. And I would then select my specific project that I want to see, and then by opening that up, I can see a list of all my files that were uploaded. So if I specifically want to check this file, there's also a small little file and a drop down there, and by clicking it and selecting my view versions option, I can check, hey, there's a version 2, that was the latest one that was uploaded. I can check the date and I can just verify it back and compare it to the file on the cloud. And this is, it really helps because maybe there might be a misunderstanding between consultants. Maybe they don't see it published on their side, and this is actually where you can check it out. Okay, and then just some requirements to do Revit Cloud work sharing is you need a subscription to Revit 2017 or later. You also need a subscription to BIM 360 Design. You also need access to the Revit Cloud work sharing service, and also a BIM 360 Docs account, an invitation to at least one BIM 360 Docs project, and also a folder permission level that includes the ability to edit a BIM 360 Docs folder. Okay, and then to just conclude this webinar and also our section on Revit Cloud work sharing, some best practices for collaboration is first of all, verify your Revit software version. The different versions that is installed on all the computers that work on work sharing files. When working with different versions, it may lead to any unexpected errors. It is also required for Revit Cloud work sharing that the security fix updates be installed. So that's just remember always everyone needs to be on the latest update and on the same version. Okay, so also only open the work sets that you need to open, as limiting the number of opened work sets can help you speed up the opening and you're saving time. Also close work sets that are not required rather than changing their visibility settings. And when ending work in a project or when users need to leave, so maybe for at the end of the day, it is better to synchronize and relinquish all your work sets so that other people can edit them and close the model. Okay, so if you perhaps forget to synchronize and elements are required, project admin can actually force relinquish. Just note, however, that this risks invalidating the user's data, and this should really only be used as a last resort. Next, also avoid multiple syncs occurring at the same time in order to prevent multiple reload latest events for other users. Okay, and then lastly, do not leave the model open overnight, and as a best practice, close your Revit every 4 hours or so to clear its memory. Okay, and this actually brings us to the end of our session, and I'm just taking the time and I see that I've spoken way too much. So should any of you have any questions, I would really like to invite you to just pop it in the question box and maybe just leave your email addresses, and I would be happy to come back to you and answer you on any questions if you have. Okay, and then I would just like to remind you again of our Baker Baynes support desk. This is should you need help or need assistance with anything, we are there to help you. And our office hours are from Mondays to Fridays from 8 up until 11:30 in the evenings. And you can see our contact details on the screen. Alternatively, if you want any more information about us, please go and check us out online. And be sure to also follow us on social media. There you'll be able to see all our latest news and updates. Okay, and then that's it for today. And I would really like to thank you all again for joining me. And feel free to reach out to me should you want. And I wish you all a great weekend. Have a good one, everyone.